From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2329, this is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. We begin this week with disaster preparedness. As the world focuses increasingly on changing weather and geologic hazards, a disaster response program with wide-ranging potential has made its debut in Germany.
Germany's amateur radio community is launching a wide-ranging programme of disaster response. The pilot project is being led by the German Amateur Radio Club, the DARC, in cooperation with Notfunk Bodensee, a Lake Constance radio response group. The need for broader and improved response was underscored recently by the devastating floods in the Ahr Valley. The new network has started to be rolled out near Lake Constance in Markdorf, where a donated emergency communications vehicle is being put into service. Organisers say that the effective radio response during the 1999 avalanche in Galtour proved to be a good model for Germany's amateur radio response, but in the intervening years, communications capability has progressed even more. The initiative is expected to expand next into Ravensburg and Lindau. Greater detail will be unveiled at Ham Radio Friedrichshafen on Friday, June 24th. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Ed Durant, DD5LP.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., a disaster drill switched formats and reported some rewarding results. The Cascadia Rising preparedness exercise in the Pacific Northwest region tests emergency response by government, business, and volunteers in the face of an earthquake and subsequent tsunami. This year's exercise, however, was unprecedented. With the region's resources stretched from historic wildfires, periods of intense rain, and the ongoing pandemic, organizers opted to hold this year's Cascadia Rising as a discussion-based drill. It was conducted virtually on Microsoft Teams rather than as the customary simulation of previous years. Robert Sabarisi, Assessment and Exercise Program Supervisor with the Washington State Emergency Management Division, told Newsline that during the drill, which ran from June 13th to 16th, amateur radio emerged with even greater potential for deeper involvement. He said there was new clarity in how hams can be further deployed beyond their critical early roles, aiding transportation and resource delivery to disaster victims. Scientists are taking a second look at the damage caused by a fragment that struck the Webb Space Telescope recently.
The U.S. Space Agency NASA is assessing the impact that a micrometeorite strike had on the James Webb Space Telescope, which it struck last month. The dust-sized fragment is reported to have hit one of the primary mirror segments used in data collection. Engineers' initial assessments show only a slight change in the performance of the mirror, and were able to reposition it in an attempt to compensate for the strike. Reports say that this was the fifth impact of its kind since the telescope was sent into space in December as the heir apparent to the aging Hubble telescope. NASA wrote in a blog post that its analysis and measurements will continue. NASA is still on track for its July 12th date to release the first images collected by the telescope. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Paul Brown, WD9GCO.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Ed Durant, DD5LP, Paul Brown, WD9GCO, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wellbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.